What if Terastallization was in Gen 1 OU? Now this is going to be a very different type of video than how I usually do. Normally with these what if videos, I can just get a Pokemon, look at its moves, its stats, show you some replays, and then I can come up with, in my opinion, what I think would be, or I'll just give my opinion how good it would be and show you a tier list. I can't exactly do that for Terastallization. For one, I tried, you cannot put Tera types into Gen 1 custom games. I tried manually putting in the Tera type in the import-export system. It just doesn't work. At least not for me. Not to mention, it would be almost impossible to predict like how the meta would actually change if every single Pokemon had access to every single Tera type. However, like, there's definitely no denying that it would be, well, it would just make Gen 1 OU even more broken. And one thing I will say, a bit of a spoiler, but I do not believe that it would make any Pokemon go from underused or below the OU. Because for starters, I'm only going to be looking at Terastallization. I will not be looking at Tera Blast. So Tera Blast will not be an option in this video. Which means that the Pokemon are stuck with the coverage they already have. Which, to be honest, like, I think in the long run, it's not gonna matter anyways. It's just like how, for the actual, you know, like Gen 9 OU, for the most part, it's really mostly just, you know, a bunch of Fairy and Water Tera types. Or at least that's how it is with my old Tera type series. I'm just gonna make a prediction before working on the tier list that there's probably gonna be just mainly 2 types that you would want to be anyways. And speaking of which, that's actually why this video is gonna be very different than others. Instead of just showing you some replays and going over how I think Terastallization would change each Pokemon with the Tera types they would want to use, instead, I have created a tier list. Or I didn't create it, I just put the types here. Okay, the point is, I will be looking over, like, all of these Pokemon that you might see in Gen 1 OU, some that are used in Gen 1 OU, and for some reason, I'm seeing a lot of stuff in, like, PU, which I just don't understand at all. But, yeah, this should be fun. I do think that this is probably the best way to go about it. Instead of just, you know, trying to theorize how you would hypothetically use each one, I'm just going to try to, like, do my best to theorize what I think would be the best Tera type for each Pokemon. And obviously, if there's a Pokemon that uses, like, different, or could use different Tera types, I'll go for that too. But I'm not sure if there's anything else I'm already missing. I don't think so. So I think I'm just good to get into it. So starting off, we have Alakazam. Now, already starting off with a bit of a tough one. Because Alakazam, he's obviously really good, but something that he definitely suffers from is, what's it called? Like, lack of any special move other than Psychic. Because these stats are amazing. Like, 135 special is amazing, but outside of Psychic, he has pretty much nothing. Now, in, like, trade packs, I think that's when he has access to the elemental punches. So, like, Ice Punch, Thunder Punch, etc. Those are really good. And if we were to allow Tera Blast, obviously, that would definitely give Alakazam pretty much any coverage it would want. And I do think if it had access to any coverage, it'd most likely want to be Tera Electric. That way you can hit Starmie. But since you don't have that, I'm going to say that Alakazam would either be Tera Ghost or Tera Psychic. Now, I know that yesterday with the Tapu Lele video, I talked about how I think Psychic is not the best offensive type. And some of you did comment, like, you know, you disagreeing with that. And I do think you guys brought up some good points. Because, like, I guess Psychic, especially for a high special Pokemon, you probably would just want to use it anyways. Not to mention for Alakazam, Lele, or even Jynx, Psychic does hit hard, so I will admit maybe I was a little bit wrong there. And so for Alakazam in particular, if it were to have like a boosted Psychic, especially with it being Alakazam's, like strongest and main attacking move, you're already spamming Psychics to lower the opponent's special, but now with you just getting an extra power boost to that Psychic, you're suddenly just doing so much more damage. And I consider that being very good. But you know what else is very good? Being completely immune to normal attacks. Explosion, Body Slam, Hyper Beam. These are by far the main counters you would use to take out an Alakazam because of its low defense. But what happens once it becomes Ghost? Tauros will usually only really have Blizzard or Earthquake to really use. So, yeah. Psychic, Terastallizing into Psychic, that sounds really good. But I think just being able to get rid of your main weakness is huge. And also, funny enough, I do think with Tera Ghost, one huge loser, and just all this would be in general, would be Gengar. It'd still be OU, because obviously no good team relies on a single Pokemon terastallizing, but it is a very funny consequence. Arbok is actually very, easy one to go over. I don't even need to, really look up its moveset, despite not being very knowledgeable on PU, because I was in a watching a Play Fun Commerce stream one time, where we were talking about Arbok along with some of her other chatters, and one of the things we were talking about is just how good Arbok would be if it actually was a normal type or a poison normal type, because if you actually look at Arbok's moves, they're not really okay. Obviously the stats are mid, but Body Slam, Glare, Hyper Beam, and not to mention with Mega Drain, Earthquake, and Rock Slide and Wrap, Arbok's moveset is actually pretty good. Especially for the time. So just imagine if not only you got rid of Arbok's Psychic and ground weakness, but then Body Slam, Hyper Beam, and Wrap get Stab with base 80 speed? Okay, that sounds really good. Amazing, actually. So I think that one's pretty simple. And Articuno is... I think this one's pretty straightforward. Because Articuno only really has ice moves, right? Yeah, it has Blizzard, Ice Beam, and then just Double Edge and Hyper Beam, really. It has Bubble Beam. So, or let's see, what's its attack at? 85. The reason why I'm debating right now is because I'm curious if Articuno is worth going Terra Normal. Because if you go Terra Normal, then you get Stab on Double Edge and Hyper Beam, which means you hit Chansey a little bit better. But is that really good? If we compare that to Terra Ice, your Ice Beams and your Blizzards especially just become fully nuclear. So, this is a good question. Terra Normal also gives you the advantage of, gives you the advantage of, being, losing your rock weakness. But then again, you're really strong against Rhydon anyways. And with Terra Ice, you're losing the quad weakness anyways. And you're just suddenly able to just... Or I wouldn't be surprised if regular Blizzard is already a guaranteed KO on Rhydon. But if it isn't already, it definitely is with Terra Ice. So, I kind of wish I had people with me for this. Because when I used to do the best Tera Type of every blank region series, I always tried to have a guest with me. So now it's just hard. I definitely should have had someone here. Oh well, this is why I have you guys, the commenters. Unlike back then, now people actually comment on my videos. So, you're going to let me know what you think would be the best Tera Type for Articuno. Because I think this is a tough one, but I'm going to lean towards Tera Ice. Because Articuno already has like the strongest unboosted special move in the game. But if you just like make Blizzard even stronger, I feel like you're already playing into Articuno's main strength. Articuno doesn't care too much about a ground weakness or immunity, so I think it actually really enjoys losing the electric and quad weakness to rock. So even defensively, it's doing better. Not to mention, if it became a normal type, still one of the best things to counter Articuno would be another ice type. But then, now you just take more damage from ice moves, and you have a chance of being frozen. So you can disagree with me if you want, but I feel like Tera Ice Articuno is like the best one. And this might single-handedly be the hardest one out of all of them. Chansey. Okay, off the bat, I'm already thinking of two. You have Tera Ice, which I know sounds weird, but not only is like a boosted Ice Beam, not only can Ice end up being pretty good, but I think way more importantly, it's just really nice to have a, you know, immunity to being frozen. I think it potentially helps Chansey win a lot more longevity battles, and especially helps with the Chansey mirror. Because, well, if both of you Tera Ice, then it's just a full-on stalemate again. But if one of you isn't, then it's just a matter of time. But another good one is, as you would expect, Tera Ghost. Because if Chansey is immune to Body Slam, Hyper Beam, and Explosion, actually, yeah, like, it might get frozen, that might be annoying, but a Tera Ghost Chansey is literally just unkillable. Just 100%. There is absolutely no way anything would ever be better than that. In fact, I would not be surprised if Tera Ghost Chansey just becomes single-handedly the greatest Pokemon to, like, actually use a Terastallization on. Like, I think Tera Ghost Chansey would even make it better than, like, theoretically Terastallizing with your Tauros. Or maybe even your Mewtwo. I would not be surprised if with Terastallization, Chansey would get banned. I can actually see that happening now. Because if Chansey is only really getting hurt by Earthquakes, or hell, even Rock Slides or Drill Pecks, holy crap, it becomes so much easier to play an entire team around a Ghost-type Chansey. Oh boy, yeah, there's a reason there's no Terastallization in Gen 1. Or other than the fact that it wasn't made yet. But if they could do it, they wouldn't, because you shouldn't. So next off, we have Charizard. I don't think it wants to stay a fire type. And I do think it enjoys the ground immunity. But I feel like Charizard would most likely want to be normal. Which I know is very boring. But what's actually like, look at here, like, stats are, like, it's offensive enough, but you know, obviously its type is like a big no-no for Gen 1. But you have stuff like Body Slam. Oh, ground. Ground Charizard's also really interesting. Charizard has Slash and Sword Stance, which both are really good. How is Charizard's attack compared to Persian? So, it has even more attack than Persian. Okay, yeah. I think this is pretty clear then. I think Charizard would want to be definitely Tera Normal. Because then, you have Stab Slashes that hit harder than Persian. You have Fire Spin. You have just regular Fire Blast if you want it. And then you have Sword Stance with Body Slam and Hyper Beam. Actually, Tera Normal Charizard could actually be OU viable. It won't, because again, why would you use Tera Normal Charizard when you can just Tera Ghost your Chansey? But theoretically, like, if there was a rule that said you cannot use Terastallization on the big three, which would never happen, but if it did happen, Charizard still would not be OU, because again, you don't like center your team around just one Pokemon in particular Terastallizing. Like, you just don't put all your eggs in one basket. Especially when it's like Charizard holding that basket, because then it just dies. But moving on, we have Clefable. And already, this is one of those hard ones. Clefable is just like a mini Chansey, basically. So, would you use Tera Ghost again? I feel like what's your Clefable usually used in, actually? What is it? Never use. So, okay, this is where I'm struggling, because I do not know what Clefable really does in OU, nor do I really know what it does in NU. When I eventually do the Hidden Power video, I definitely need like 1 or 2 people with me. Because I'm definitely starting to show that I'm not as knowledgeable as I should be, despite making so many of these videos. Ooh. But I know it has good coverage though. It has Blizzard, Fire Blast, Body Slam, Psychic, I think, yeah. It has a lot of stuff, pretty much everything you could ever want. So, Tera Normal is interesting, because then you hit harder with your normal stab. But I feel like probably don't care that much. Maybe you want to go Tera Ice, but or 85 special is just only 10 lower than Jynx. A part of me wants to just play it safe and do Tera Ghost, but I'm pretty sure that for NU, normal isn't as dominant as an attacking type. I know it's still really good, but I don't think Tera Ghost Clefable would be as dominant in Never Use as Tera Ghost Chansey would be in OU. So someone can correct me that if I'm wrong. But if that's the case, then what do you give it? Or actually, wait, Charizard and Blastoise are good in NU, right? Same with Nidoking. I'm leaning towards either Tera Ice or Electric. And I feel like with Blizzard, you already do pretty good against Nidoking. So I'm gonna say that Clefable would be Tera Electric, which I'm probably just dead wrong on that. But who knows? You guys can just correct me. If you're actually knowledgeable on NU, or if you know about what theoretical viability Clefable has in OU, let me know. Because this is gonna be a video where I am gonna seriously need your guys' support. I'm gonna actually need you guys to correct me on a lot of stuff here. So, let's see here. Next up is Cloyster. Cloyster is super bulky, but I think it really enjoys having its freeze immunity. And it doesn't really fear normal attacks. I don't think it cares too much about paralysis. So, is there a better defensive type for it than Ice? Because let's see here. What do you gain from something else? If you go Tera Ground, then you can become immune to electric types. But then what do you actually do in the matchup afterwards? Not really anything. So, yeah, I think Cloyster would most likely just say Tera Ice. I just do not see any reason to do anything or change into anything else. I think that Ice immunity is very good. I think the Ice resistance is very good. And to be honest, I feel like Cloyster is probably one of those Pokemon that you don't really want to terastallize it anyways. I don't think so. But Dodrio is probably one that you would consider. Obviously, with Tera Normal, it would hit really hard, as it already has a higher attack stat than Tauros, I'm pretty sure. But I actually feel like it would rather get powered up on its Drill Pecks. Not only for just this meta, where a lot more things can turn Tera Ghost, meaning that ironically, Normal isn't actually as strong of a stab, but also Drill Peck's really good, and outside of Zapdos, you don't really have any Pokemon that can really use Flying Stab. I don't know if, Terra Flying Drill Peck is a guaranteed KO on Exeggutor, But even if it isn't, it's just hitting everything in the tier just super hard. So, yeah, Tera flying. Also, it probably enjoys keeping its ground immunity, to be honest. And then Dragonite. This one I think should be like easy for all of us. Dragonite really enjoys like Tera Normal in Gen 9 OU. And it really, really, really wishes it was a normal type in Gen 1. Its Wraps and way more importantly, its Hyper Beams would just hit at a ridiculous level. It would still struggle from all of the same issues it usually does, outside of, you know, suffering from a 4x Blizzard weakness. And also now it suffers from, you know, Chansey or other Pokemon, just Tera Ghost. Like, even though a lot of things become really good with Tera Normal, I'm gonna make the claim that Tera Ghost is gonna be the best one by far, because I really just do not see really any reason for anything to just not want, like, you know, a normal immunity. So theoretically, everything you could probably just put in Tera Ghost, and it would debatably be its best Tera type. But not for everything. I think almost every single one of the ground types, like Dugtrio here, would prefer to stay ground. Because ground types, especially, like, you know, hard counter electric, harder than any other generation with the two. Just because there's just way less coverage, you know, just around in general. And that's especially the case for electric types. So yes, Dugtrio with Stab Slash. Does it sound promising? Yeah, it does. But also, Dugtrio with like a powered up Earthquake is also pretty terrifying in its own right. In fact, I'd argue it's way more terrifying, since because of Dugtrio's, you know, amazing speed, it's gonna crit a lot more. So what's gonna be more scary? Stab Critical Slash, or a Stab Tera Ground Earthquake? I don't think I need to explain myself any further. Another one is like maybe Rock, just because you get normal resistance and Rock Spite's not Stab, but obviously not really that good. I think Electrode for the most part is irrelevant. I could see it being electric, and I'm just gonna put it there because I'm not gonna put much thought into it. Because who the hell is gonna terastallize their Electrode? But if not electric, probably just normal. That way your explosions, or stab at least. But yeah, not much to really talk about. And Exeggutor is a tough one. Because I feel like Exeggutor is one of the few Pokemon where it actually really, really enjoys, you know, having a psychic resistance. Because it likes being super tanky. But also at the same time, I feel like Exeggutor, if it was able to, like, go Tera Grass, I can actually see Exeggutor really enjoying a powered up Mega Drain. Just being able to hit a lot harder, and way more importantly, be able to get back HP. Because, like, that's pretty rare, in all honesty. You have Recover, and you have, like, Support and Rest, but those are, like, the only ways of really gaining back HP. And Exeggutor has Mega Drain, Leech Seed, and Rest, but obviously all three of those suffer for one reason or another. With Exeggutor and Sweet Powder, I feel like with Grass, it will have a lot of opportunities to either just do insane amount of damage against like Starmie or especially Rhydon with Mega Drain, or just do pretty good like chip with just anything else. I would imagine with Tera Grass, Mega Drain probably hits as hard as Giga Drain. And I think most people would probably use Giga Drain on Exeggutor if you could use it in Gen 1. So, yeah, I think I'm just gonna put it in Tera Grass. Disagree with me if you want, but I can see that working. But also, Tera Psychic, obviously, to hit harder with Psychics. But with Exeggutor and its 95 attack, Tera Normal is also just pretty good. And no, I'm not saying that because of Explosion, but because of Double Edge. Double Edge is already a pretty decent move to use on Exeggutor, and for my sets personally, I prefer to use Double Edge over Explosion. If you were to give Exeggutor Stab, Yeah, it hits pretty hard, and it does pretty good on a non-Tera Ghost Chansey. I have absolutely no idea why Flareon is here. I am calling BS that Flareon has any sort of niche in OU whatsoever. So, like, I'm just gonna put Flareon and Tera Poison. That way, if someone just skips to the end, like, you know, because they don't feel like watching the entire video, they're gonna see Flareon there. They're gonna be like, what the scallop? Like, why did he put in Tera Poison? And then they're gonna rewind, they're gonna see this part, and then they're gonna feel very silly. So, take that. Now, Gengar. Part of me wants to say he would just be Tera Ghost, because I feel like he doesn't want to give up his normal immunities. And I think that's true. I think just like Cloyster, it's probably a Pokemon that doesn't really want to Terastallize. But if it could, I see two main options. Either Tera Psychic, because that way it resists Psychic moves, and also gets Stab Psychic itself, or Tera Grass, so that it can resist Earthquake and hit Rhydon with a Stab Mega Drain. Does one of these sound significantly better than the other? Yes, it does. Obviously, Gengar would rather just be Tera Psychic. But in reality, I just do not see it really like using Terastallization at all. Golduck is another one where I seriously doubt it has any sort of OU niche whatever. So for Golduck, I'm just gonna put it at Psychic because it should be a Psychic type. Not to mention we're like not even halfway through the list, and my voice I can already feel is starting to go out. So I might be in trouble. So please look out for me, pray for me. Now Golem, it really enjoys the, you know, resistance to normal. But with Tera Ground, it can do what Rhydon already does, and that's consistently 2-hit KO Chansey. And luckily it doesn't even matter what the Tera type is. So I think it's pretty simple. Not to mention, I feel like the electric immunity is probably better than the normal resistance. And Golem himself is already pretty tanky physically. And funny enough, I do think Tera Ground is like one of the few ones where I could actually see it being used as almost like an ghost, I guess you can say. And I do think it's ironic that just so far looking through the tier list already, I definitely feel like Tera Ground would actually be the best offensive Tera type and not Tera Normal. It's kind of funny how it works that way. It's a shame that, like, there isn't, like, a custom, like, you know, server where you can just test this out. Because that would be legitimately interesting. Now, Gyarados. Gyarados, I think its type is already pretty good. I think it enjoys having that Earthquake immunity. And I feel like a good player could actually use some decent stuff with it. I'm not skilled enough to do that. But I also feel like if it could, it would probably want to hit really hard with its Hydro Pumps. It already has like a pretty good 100 special. Or actually, I forgot about Tera Electric. Yeah, Gyarados does have like Thunderbolt, doesn't it? Okay, never mind. I think that's actually the clear choice. Because with Tera Electric, it no longer fears Zapdos or Starmie. And what is like Gyarados weak to? Ground? Okay, it can take on Rhydon and Golem no problem with Hydro Pump or Surf. So with Tera Electric, Gyarados can just very easily take care of all of its weaknesses. Okay, yeah, that was actually very simple. And in Hitmonlee, I'm not even sure if it's worth really going into. It's like one niche is having like the only truly good fighting move. And I don't think it would matter if you change to like Tera Psychic, because you still have a base 35 special. So you're just gonna get killed anyways. So if you're gonna use Hitmonlee, you might as well just use it to the best of its strength, in my opinion. Hypno? I feel like Hypno, it doesn't really... matter between Tera Normal or Tera Ghost. Tera Psychic, maybe, but I don't think Hypno really cares about hitting harder. I think Hypno just really enjoys being a great utility Pokemon with Hypnosis, Thunder Wave, Headbutt, etc. And if that's the case, getting rid of like the most common like physical attacking type it has to worry about is definitely the best choice. And then Jolteon. If there was like Tera Blast, this would be very easy. Because I feel like a Jolteon that can Terastallize, it would probably Tera into, let's see here. It's either water or grass. And I'm gonna say probably grass? Or, I don't know for sure. It would probably just depend on the preference. But here, it's very different. Because he still only has the coverage options that he has. And yes, I know, Tera Bug Pin Missile is very appealing. But let's be real here, folks. Tera Fighting Double Kick is just way more consistent. But something tells me neither one of those would really be good. You could still make, like, Jolteon Tera Flying or Grass, so that it doesn't have to worry about ground moves anymore. But then it still suffers from what electric types already suffer from in Gen 1. It has literally no moves to, like, hit the ground types. So really, Terastallizing to do that doesn't really help you at all. Does Jolteon run any, like, normal moves? Let's see here, Jolteon. Base 65 attack is really bad. It has Body Slam and Hyper Beam, but that doesn't really look like it's worth it. So I'm going to say that Jolteon would probably just go with Tera Electric. It's already very fast, it crits a lot, so hitting even harder with Thunderbolt just sounds like it would be really good, at least on paper. But it's probably yet another Pokemon you don't bother Terastallizing. Jynx. I'm leaning towards Tera Ice, because I feel like hitting harder with Blizzards and having an Ice immunity is better than the Psychic resistance. You could potentially just Tera Jynx into something that wants to, you know, more easily, like, take on, like, the things it's weak to, like Fire or Rock. But I don't really see that happening. But Tera Ghost is... Oh, wait, yeah, no, Tera Ghost. Easily. Easily Tera Ghost. Like, being able to completely be immune to Hyper Beams and Body Slams, yeah, that's obviously amazing. I don't even know why I even considered Ice. Now that I think about it, this just seems really obvious. Kabutops. Kabutops is weird, because it really needs both of its stabs. It really needs its rock typing so that it can resist normal moves, but it needs Hydro Pump so that it can 3-hit KO Tauros. So, between the two, I would imagine with Tera Water, Hydro Pump goes from a 2-hit KO to a 3-hit KO, so that sounds better. And Kangaskhan. I'm leaning towards Tera Normal again, and I'd be surprised if something else is better, but just to be safe, let's just look. Okay, only a base 40 attack is not very good. And its attack, or special, I meant, not attack. Base 95 attack is good, but you have like Body Slam, Hyper Beam. Oh wait, I forgot that with Terastallization, you still keep your primary stab. So if that's the case, I can actually see Kangaskhan being Tera Ground. I feel like having a Stab Earthquake would actually be pretty good. Where did I put it? No. Where's Ground? There it is. Now Kingler. Kingler, I want to say Tera Water. And I definitely think it's one of its very good choices. But a Tera Normal Kingler with a Sword Sense up and Hyper Beam, or that actually might be overkill. This one's a toughie. I feel like Tera Normal or Tera Water are both equally good. It just depends on your preference. Obviously, I think there's less risk for using Tera Water, because you don't have to risk going for a Sword Stance. But a Kingler that has Stab, Body Slam, and Hyper Beam is just completely terrifying. For the sake of just making the tier list look more diverse, I'm going to put Kingler in Water, but I like Normal and Water equally. Lapras, I would imagine, would be just like Gyarados. It has Thunderbolt. If it can use that on Stab, that would be really good. And then it just easily has the tools to take care of, what's it called? Ground types, yeah. And if that's the case, then Lapras still struggles from how it usually struggles from. So, like, it can beat stuff 1v1, but only really just one Pokemon. And it doesn't really have a niche for the most part. It would be better as an electric type, because now it has a much better matchup against, like, Starmie, and, like, obviously Zapdos and Jolteon. But it doesn't really solve the main issue, if you really look at it. But it would definitely get a buff, so, like, that's definitely worth respecting. Machamp, I'm gonna say probably Ground, because it's... Or maybe, I guess Tera Normal is also really good. Well, actually, if you give it Tera Normal, it no longer has to worry about paralysis from Body Slam. But then you can also get that from Tera Ghost. But also, Machamp probably struggles from Power, ironically enough. So if you gave it Tera Normal, a Tera Normal Stab, like Body Slam and Hyper Beam, is pretty good. I actually feel like, yeah, I think Machamp would rather be Tera Normal rather than Tera Ghost. You can disagree with me with that if you want. Moltres is mainly known for Fire Spin, Agility, Fire Blast, and Hyper Beam. So the real question becomes, what's better between Stab, Hyper Beam, or an even more powerful Fire Spin and Fire Blast? It's just like the Articuno thing, but much harder. As, I wish I, like, did some, like, damage calcs beforehand. I would have to see how much of, like, a Tera Normal, like, Hyper Beam does to Chansey. If it, let's say it goes from Chansey being, like, a 3-hit KO to, like, a 2-hit KO, I would probably lean it towards making Moltres Tera Normal. Especially since you now lose a lot of your really bad weaknesses, like your just abysmal weakness to both Rock and Ice. But on the other hand, considering its main win con is preferably using Fire Blast and Fire Spin anyways, if those are doing more damage, then you might not even, or Hyper Beam might not be as needed in the first place. So I don't know, it's really hard to say. Like, I'd have to see the damage calcs for both boosted Fire Blast and Hyper Beam. And there's just so many different Pokemon here, I don't even know. Like, I'm going to just put in Tera Fire, because I feel like we're not going to see much else of it. Not to mention, if I had to choose one, I would rather go for that. Because I feel like, well, I feel like Fire Spin doing extra chip, that's already pretty nice. But then, depending on how much more of a boost Fire Blast gives, it might just be able to be good enough to just kill Chansey anyways. I'm assuming after, you know, you're Fire Spinning, trapping it a lot. But I do not know. But with the meta, actually, with some of things going Tera Ghost, especially Chansey, actually, now that I think about it, Tera Fire is probably just the better one. As more consistently, you don't have to worry about just, in a single turn, just your Pokemon just wasting a turn because something else just became immune to your Hyper Beam. Okay, yeah, so I think Tera Fire is just definitive. I do not know if Nidoking or Nidoqueen have, like, any relevance in Gen 1 OU whatsoever. So for these two, I think I'm just gonna put them in Tera Ground. Because I'm assuming if you are going to use them, it's just going to be to replace your Rhydon. And if that's the case, I don't think it's a good idea replacing your Rhydon if they don't even stay ground type. And I know Ninetales has Confuse Ray, but does it have anything else? Because base 100 special is actually pretty good. Okay, he has normal moves. And 76 attack though? I don't know, it doesn't really look too good. I could see you maybe... Or actually no. I was gonna say I could see you maybe being Tera Grass. That way you resist ground. But... like, keep in mind, in this gen, most of the good water types probably have like the ice typing too. Or if they don't have that, they just have ice coverage. So you become Tera Grass, you don't have Tera Blast, but then what happens then? You just lose to Starmie, like Cloyster and Lapras? I don't think Ninetales has enough attack to where, like, Stab normal is super good. But just in general, I just don't see Ninetales being used at all. But the only reason why I can see it more than like some of the other stuff I've skipped over is just because of Confuse Ray. But maybe I'm wasting my time with this one. I think I'll just put it in Tera... I really don't want to put something else in Tera Ghost. Let's just... screw it, we'll just keep it in Tera Fire. Amistar, I think, is basically the exact same thing with Kabutops. So, you really like the normal resistance, but I would imagine that your really powerful Hydro Pumps would be a good enough trade. Now, Persian. With only Thunderbolt and Bubble Beam as your real coverage options, are you really gonna, like, use one of those? Let me see how high Persian special is. But I think the idea of, yeah, just 65 as special, probably not worth it. So I think Persian with, like, you know, Tera Normal, that's obviously just very scary. I think, yeah, there's no way, like, I'm actually curious just how much more powerful Tera Normal Persian Slash would be compared to, like, Tauros' Hyper Beam. I would imagine it would just be, like, really scary. But is it capable of OHKOing Chansey? It might be. And Poliwrath, I think, is another interesting one. Because Poliwrath, it has Submission, good Water Stab, it has Blizzard, it has Hypnosis. So I feel like for Poliwrath, considering it's a setup on that it does a pretty good mix attacker, I feel like Poliwrath wants to, like, have a more defensive Tera type. And while Tera Ice for Stab Blizzard's nice, you can go for, like, Tera Water or Tera Fighting, just really going for your stab. I'm actually going to say that I think Poliwrath would actually want to be Tera Psychic, which might seem a little bit out there. But I think one of your biggest problems with Poliwrath is losing to the Psychic types. Obviously Zapdos too, but I feel like it's a lot easier to take on Zapdos with Amnesia and Blizzard. So I feel like giving Poliwrath a very valuable Psychic Resist, I feel like that could be pretty good. Porygon really shouldn't be here. It's only good because it beats Snorlax, and it needs the normal type in order to do that. Raichu is interesting because it has Surf, but that niche alone already isn't really enough for it to be, like, you know, used in OU a lot. So, does this stay at Tera Electric? Or let's see here, if you gave it Tera Grass, then it could resist the ground type attacks. And then with Surf, it can take on, you know, like Rhydon and Golem and whatnot. So that seems pretty good. But at that point, you can go for Tera Flying and just be full on immune instead. That also seems pretty good. But then, what is it scared of if it becomes Tera Grass or Flying? Doesn't like Blizzards. But what's it gonna be scared of? I guess Starmie, but then you have Thunderbolt for that. It's a tough one. But I'm gonna say that Tera Flying is probably the best thing no matter what. Maybe I'm wrong. But it seems pretty good. And I don't think it really needs like an extra power boost for Thunderbolt. Rapidash is another one that I'm just going to skip entirely. I just do not see it having any sort of niche. And just to keep people, just to make sure y'all are paying attention, I'm putting in a Tera Rock, alright? If someone skips through the video, and you see someone in the comments saying, like, why is that thing Tera Rock? You should say something. I'm not sure what you should say. Maybe tell them to watch the video. But just say something, because comments are good for the YouTube algorithm. Raticate has Super Fang. That's like its like niche in Gen 1. And I feel like for Raticate, if it had extra like power on its like body slams and hyper beams, that would actually be pretty good. So I think Tera Normal is like pretty easy just to put Raticate in. At the same time, for these two, Tera Ground is also probably the best thing. Especially for Rhydon. Because Rhydon's Earthquakes already hit super hard. But then on top of that, you just make it hit even harder. But also, I could see maybe doing something like Tera Grass to get rid of or actually no, Tera Water. Tera Water would be better. Because then you're much stronger, or at the very least you resist both water and, what's it called? Water and ice. But then you're weak to grass still, but you couldn't really hurt Exeggutor anyways. But I feel like with this meta, but especially with a lot of Pokemon using more bulkier like Tera types, I feel like Rhydon would want to keep the extra power though. Would it? Actually, no, Rhydon is very scary and it definitely likes having longevity. So maybe Tera Water? But also, like, if you give it Tera Psychic, it can probably just beat, like, Pokemon like Alakazam in a 1v1. Not to mention, it's no longer weak to Chansey's Ice Beam. Actually, wait, yeah, one of the good things about Rhydon is that it has a could go either way against Chansey. So, get rid of its resistance, or give it its weakness to Ice and Water. And then you also just, just in general, it's just a much bulkier type. It's gonna miss the electric immunity and the rock and the normal resistance, but I can see this working. But I also really like Tera Ground. Also, funny enough, I think this also makes like Rhydon Surf and Bubble Beam do ever so slightly more in the Rhydon matchup. So it's funny. Now Slowbro, I actually feel like Slowbro just wants to be the main thing Slowbro wants to do is get rid of its electric weakness. So I feel like Ground is the perfect type for it. Because then, what's it scared of afterwards? I guess the main thing it's really scared of is Blizzard. And maybe a Surf from like an enemy Slowbro or something? Blizzard, it would admittedly be a huge problem. But also, Blizzard has far less power points than Thunderbolt. So while you might still die to a crit anyways, that's just something you have to accept when playing Slowbro. The fast special attack will probably crit, but with Blizzard, you have a much better chance of surviving than something spamming Thunderbolt. Especially since Blizzard has a 10% chance to miss. So I think that's pretty straightforward. Oh god. Oh my gosh, these next three. Where the heck do I put Snorlax? It's also especially hard because there's so many different sets for Snorlax. Do you want to hit even harder with normal moves? That's probably what you're gonna do. For like Ubers. Do you really like Amnesialax? Do you want to make it just Tera Ice? Just annihilate everything? Do you want to make it Tera Ghost so that it doesn't care about normal moves? I don't know. Snorlax is so versatile. I guess Tera Ghost, regardless of what set you're using, will always be the safer thing. I'm just gonna put it there, instead of spending like 10 years trying to really think about it. Oh, that's actually kind of weird. I'm talking about how I thought Tera Ghost was the best Tera type by far, but so far we got more stuff in ground and normal. So maybe I'm wrong. Or maybe it's just that, like I said before, pretty much anything could be debated to be Tera Ghost, and it would already by default be like in like the top 3 best Tera types. So who knows? Starmie. I think Starmie is another case where it wants to be an electric type. Because Bulk Beam coverage, it's good. And Freeze, like Freeze immunity, I consider being pretty good. But as a electric type, not only like, you know, it's just hitting harder with Thunderbolt pretty good, but Starmie is probably the best Pokemon for taking care of, like, you know, ground types. Not to mention, while that's super relevant, being immune to that 10% chance for Thunderbolt to, you know, paralyze you, you probably won't realize it a lot, but it'll come in handy. Also, now that I'm seeing all of these, Clefable being here is just very ridiculous. I'm just putting in Tera Ghost, where it probably should have went from the very beginning. Okay, Tauros. I think the main 2 for Tauros is Tera Ghost and Tera Normal. But also, I think strangely enough, Tera Electric is also worth considering. And that's because I believe Thunderbolt is a 3-hit KO on Cloyster. But with Tera, like, Electric, I would imagine at that point just goes to a consistent 2-hit KO. So if you're ever using a Tauros set with that, that's probably the best thing you should do. But for here, I'm gonna say that Tera Ghost is probably better. Because yes, Tauros, if it has Tera, those body slams and those hyper beams are gonna be terrifying. But what is usually the best thing to use against the enemy Tauros? That's right, your own Tauros. Like, Gen 1 is almost always about just trying to, you know, play and trying to set up your Tauros to be in the more favorable position. And if that's the case, then being completely immune to your enemy Tauros' body slams and hyper beams, that is just insane. And it does become a little bit scummier, because at that point, you're either using Fire Blast, you know, trying to fish for burns, or you're trying to go for blizzards, fishing for crits, or freeze. Both of those don't sound like a lot of fun, but there's no denying that, like, Tera Ghost Tauros would be very hard to kill, because it hits very hard, and Tauros itself, it ironically no longer becomes a good counter to it. Now, Tentacruel, I'm pretty sure just isn't used in Gen 1 OU. I've never really heard anyone talking about it. I'm not gonna bother going over if it would be good with Rab, or like stuff like that. I'm just gonna assume that Tera Ghost is probably the best thing you can make it, because you're getting rid of its electric and electric, psychic, and ground weaknesses, but also you're now just immune to just very powerful normal moves, which means that they have to take on your very high special. I'm just not really gonna bother thinking about anything else, because I just don't see anything else really being better than that. Okay, so we only have 3 left. Sword Stance, grass types. These are weird. I do not know which I would really prefer. Like, if you make these things Tera Grass, then Razor Wave just hits so much harder. But also, these guys already like using, like, good moves like, you know, Wrap or Sword Stance, Body Slam. So would you want to get the stab on them? I guess you don't really lose anything if you know, just completely just go Tera Normal. Because what happens afterwards? You lose your ground resistance, but you have a guaranteed crit on Razor Leaf, so you're beating the ground types anyways. You become immune to Body Slam. You're no longer weak to Blizzard. Yeah, that sounds like it's much better than just hitting harder with Razor Leaf. I think Tera Normal is the best thing for these. And I think, okay, Tera Normal is just barely 1 above Tera Ghost. And last but not least, we have Zapdos, as we usually do for my videos. Tera Flying is interesting, because then you're just hitting super, super hard on just both sides of the physical and special. But I'm not sure if it's really worth it, because yeah, you hit a lot harder on Chansey, but is Tera Flying Drill Peck a 2-hit KO on Chansey? I'm assuming not. I'm assuming it's probably closer to a 3-hit KO. And if that's the case, then I think Thunderbolt will be more terrifying when you're Tera Electric. But here's a big question. Does Zapdos learn Reflect? I think it does. I think it has actually the same defense as Tapu Koko as well. So if Zapdos becomes pure Electric, it could use Reflect theoretically, tank ground moves a lot better, and yes, it does nothing to, like, Rhydon still. But if Tauros can't use Blizzard, and if Earthquake doesn't do much, and if Zapdos is just nuking everything with Thunderbolt, that sounds really terrifying. Not to mention, I would imagine its electric type attacks would do so much more against Chansey as well. Still, like, you would still probably rather go for Drill Peck, but when Chansey has to switch in, if you get a crit, that's gonna do a lot. And it would probably just win you the game right there. So there we have it. I guess maybe I could have, like, experimented or entertained the idea of some things getting, you know, bug types ground resistance, but probably not worth it. And also just rip Poison, Rock, Bug, and Dragon, who didn't really get anything. And I think it's surprising for Rock, because Rock normal resistance is pretty good, but then again, normal immunity is just better. So here is the tier list that I decided to come up with. Despite normal having ever so slightly more, I still think Tera Ghost is by far the best Tera type to have in Gen 1. But just like with a lot of, like, you know, of these games where Terastallization is a thing, it's really a case-by-case scenario. You just play with your opponent, you see which one of you Teras first, and whoever does a better job saving their Tera will probably just win the game. So, thank you all for watching. What do you think? Obviously, there was a lot here to talk about, so you guys let me know in the comments what Tera type for your favorite Pokemon you think would be the best. I do not expect you guys to go over all of these and to go over calculations for all of them. If you do, I will actually just, like, be concerned about your mental health. But this could be a fun discussion. And for anyone asking if I'm gonna, like, do this with underused or never used, etc., even with this one, I feel like I really suffered because there was a lot of Pokemon here that I just wasn't knowledgeable on. And with every other tier, I just get less and less knowledgeable as it goes on. So would I be willing to, like, do the best Tera type for, like, underuse and never use and PU? Only if I'm with somebody that is very knowledgeable in those tiers that could actually help me. So, like, I don't know, like, maybe someone get, like, Playground Comma or, like, Big Yellow here. But, that's about it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, this is Groundback, and I look forward to hearing from you.